Welcome to day 29 of your 30-day Dental MBA, buying and selling and merging a dental practice. It's a fun day for me. This is some very serious stuff. First of all, when you're going to go buy or start up your own practice or whatever, we're talking about a serious lifelong commitment. If you take what the average dentist makes a year, $122,000 a year, times that over the 40-year career, you're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars. That's why it blows my mind when people look at what I've set up here. If you look at this picture here, people sit there and say, oh my God, you paid $275,000 for a pad. You got a $1.2 million in this dental office. It's such high overhead. Hell, the average McDonald's has got $1.4 million before they sell a pair of hamburgers and fries for $1. This may look big to you. These are not big. These are big investment decisions. So let's go into this about, first of all, a lot of dentists ask me, can you really get into a dental office with no money down? Abso-flippin-lutely. I've done it several times. Here's how I did it, and here's what you can do. You see, the number one place that a mom is going to be, moms make 89% of all appointments. They're 66% of all root plane, curettage, perio surgeries. They're 89% of dentures and partials, getting converted, implant, retained prosthesis. And you're going to find them most at grocery stores. Second at fast food, third at gas, fourth at the bank. We call these neighborhood centers if they have a grocery store. If you see a suite of stores, you know, it might have a dry cleaner and a Mexican restaurant and a chiropractor. Those are called strip centers. A strip center is when you have no major anchor. If the anchor is a Target or a Walmart or a Kmart, some people call it, you know, a big center or whatever, but it has to be a neighborhood center. It has to have a grocery store. If you have a grocery store anchor on one corner and a Walmart Target anchor on another corner, you have two major 20, 30 acre developments on the same intersection. That's called a power intersection. Power intersections are the future, especially if there's an artery feed of an interstate feed that has an exit that gets off there within, you know, a block or two. Now what you do is you go up to the rental place and you see a nice little bay in there, say it's 1,200 square feet. And you're out of school and you see this 1,200 square foot bay. What you do is what I do is you walked up and they said that the rent on this was $20 a square foot per year for a term of 3 years. Now, $20 a square foot per year is worth $20,000 a year on 1,000 square feet. So $20 square foot, 1,000 square feet, that's $20,000 a year. Times a 3-year lease, it was $60,000. So what you do is you see the contractor and you get your equipment layout from your equipment supply house and decide what you need. And then you get the designs and you figure out that it's going to be roughly $50 a square foot to go in there and improve this 1,000 square foot office with sheetrock and walls and carpet and drop ceiling and what have you. And $50 a square foot times 1,000 square foot is another $50,000. So basically you have a $50,000 build out. Divide that by 5 years, it's $1,000 a year. If you have the $10,000 a year build out to the $20,000 a year lease, you come up with $30,000. Divide the $30,000 a year lease by 1,000 square foot, and you come up with $30 a square foot for 5 years. And it really blows the landlord's mind when you walk in there and you say, how much is it to rent this? And they say, it's $20 a square foot, and we're looking for a 3-year lease. And you say, I won't touch it for anything less than $30 a square foot for a 5-year lease. And they're like, this guy wants to pay half again, the $20 a square foot. Why do you want to pay $30 a square foot per year for a 5-year lease? And you say, because I'm going to give you the blueprints. I want you to build it out. And you do the build out. I'll come back and rent this $30 a square foot. So all this is creative financing. And then, you know, when you go talk to Healthco or Shine or any of these people, they're in the business of selling dental equipment. So they're in the business of getting someone to lease it to you. Especially since it's a lot easier to repossess a dental chair. If you're a Patterson or Shine and you take back a developer and a Pano and a chair, that's their business selling those. They're going to be able to sell it. So whereas the bank, if the bank finance you a dental chair and you default, the bank, they're not even going to come pick up your dental chair. They wouldn't even know what to do with it. They would say it's worth 5 cents on the dollar. So you can get suppliers to lease you all your dental equipment, and you can get real estate people to do your build out on a 5-year lease. All you got to do is look them in the eye, have a pro forma, and sell yourself. If they have faith in you, there's no risk, because all businessmen know it's not the idea, it's can the management execute this vision. And if they have faith in you as a manager, and they think if anybody could do this, it'd be this son of a gun. I mean, I went in there and talked to the bank. In fact, did I ever tell you how I got married and I even got a loan? Hell, I went out on my date with my wife. I thought every date was I thought it was basically an interview for a spouse. If I wanted to have fun, I'd be out with my friends. And I went out on dates, and, usually within, 10, 15 minutes, you'd never marry this girl, let alone have kids with her and tie down and have a family. I picked up my wife after junior year, right before senior year, the Bushwhacker Dental Ball. By midnight, I'd already proposed. The 10th week from when we went out, we were already married in Las Vegas. Same thing, I went to my bank. I went to Valley National Bank, which is now Bank One. I'll never forget the banker's name. Her name was Darlene Wing. And I asked her for a $100,000 signature loan. She said, no way. She laughed so hard, snot flew all over her shirt. Every day Darlene would come to work, I would be sitting there right where she comes in and parked with a little name deal, and I'd be telling her everything I did the day before, and that I found a lease, and I got my yellow page ad, and I'm on my 100 dentist, yada, yada, yada. She'd say, Howard, that's great, but see, I can't give you a loan because you don't, yada, yada. And I'd say, I know, but I'm sure between the age of 25 and 65, I'm going to have whatever I need for you to give me a loan. And she goes, this I need a cosigner, I need this, I need that. Every damn day she showed up, I was there updating her. The 10th day, she pulled up to the bank. She slammed the car. She said to me, and I quote, if I give you a blankety-blank loan, do you swear to blankety-blank I'll never see your blanket face again? I stood out there for 2 hours, and a receptionist came out. I signed the papers on the hood of my gosh darn car. I don't take no for an answer. Just sell yourself as a manager. Sell yourself as an executioner of business systems, and that you have a vision. If you had a vision, I knew what this today's dental was going to be. I knew it was going to be somewhere between freshman and sophomore year of dental school. Bernie Fink, he lectures on group practice all over the United States, and it was just hilarious at the ADA convention in San Francisco. It says in 1960 there was little to no value in buying a dental practice other than the equipment, because anybody could go down the street, start a dental practice, and within a year be at the same level of whatever practice they would have buy. So there was no risk in 1960. Everybody had rotten teeth. Hardly anything was fluoridated. You barely had toothpaste with fluoride in it. And there was just, everybody's so busy pulling teeth, doing dentures, learning how to do root canals. Anybody could be successful. The world got competitive, and now things have changed. You cannot compare apples to apples. The same debt amount to build a business from scratch with no income stream to the same amount of debt for an existing business with a known current income stream is two different apples. It is even more ludicrous to compare the amount of risk at stake. If you sit there and you go borrow $150,000 to put in your own dental office with no patients, no income, nothing guaranteed, versus $150,000 to buy a dental office with an income stream, I don't care if they only have 1,000 charts, don't compare the two. One has cash flow and income stream, existing patients in a very competitive environment. Dentistry today, the year 2000 compared to 1960 is 100 times more competitive. You have dentists going bankrupt now. In 1960, the only way a dentist could go bankrupt is if he had a license taken away. Usually it was for, felonies, okay? Would you prefer to have your retirement money invested in 100% in an IPO, an initial public offering, where it's totally new concept, it's all risk, or an S&P 500 index fund? There's a lot to be said for, if you're going to spend $250,000 on land and building a dental office or whatever, just buy something existing. We call that risk incorporated. Would you pay $200,000 for a business with no customers or sales? If so, you should start your own business and call it risk incorporated. In valuation, the value of illiquid assets such as dental office equipment is figured at what someone is willing to pay for it now. I continue to see all these cockamamie valuations where people even put them in print. There's a Dental MBA doing it where he says, here's how you value your office. It's X dollars for the charts, X dollars for the equipment, X dollars for this, and like you're going to quantitatively arrive at value. You can't price a house like that. Your house is valued. A house will never increase or decrease in value. Either the entire neighborhood's going up in value or the entire neighborhood's going down in value. And what they do is, you want to sell this house, they find out what similar houses in your neighborhood have sold for in the last short time period. The valuation of a dental office is only based on what someone is willing to pay for it. In fact, if you gave me two identical offices, same square foot, same number of charts, same staff, same cash flow and everything, put one in a very liquid city in the United States, one of the 8 cities with more than 1 million people, and then put the same practice in a town of 2,000, the practice in the big city is more liquid and will always sell for about twice of what the identical practice is selling for in rural America in the same state as the big city. Only one way to value an asset. There is no such thing as an arithmetic, mathematic, quantitative formula for deriving the value of any business or asset. The only way to value anything is to find out what amount someone is willing to pay for it. The most any formula can do is to make an estimate based on judgment of what someone will pay based on similar comps of similar sales in your area recently. Alan F. Thornburg, like him or not, I love the guy, I idolize him, started AFCO, AFT-CO, stands for Alan F. Thornburg Company, started in 1968 when I was 6 years old. This man has sold over $1 billion with a B. $1 billion worth of dental offices. Trust me, this man single-handedly wrote the original book on selling in dental practices. He has over 100 in-office practice management consultants spread out all 50 states. He uses his consultants in the field to manage these transitions. He doesn't want some young kid to buy a practice for $350,000 and have his mom co-signing for half of it with her retirement income and then have this thing fizzle. He's the most successful because he's done the most. This guy handles it from the appraisal to the transition to making sure he has a program where after you sell your practice, they're in there every month for a year and a half, making sure this business pro forma is doing what it's supposed to do, doing what they designed it to do. Great opportunities are not seen with your eyes, they are seen with your mind. There is no goodwill in a dental practice. I get so sick of hearing how you measure goodwill. Goodwill in everything you're saying is really the restrictive covenant. Come on, if you bought a practice and the selling dentist went next door, you would only have the value of the dental equipment and the build out. If you bought a McDonald's and the seller went next door and opened up Mean Gene's hamburger machine, you couldn't care less. The supposed goodwill value in a selling practice is only in the restrictive covenant. McDonald's has goodwill. When I am driving from LA to Phoenix and my boys see McDonald's and say, Daddy, can we stop and get a hamburger? McDonald's has goodwill. If the owner of that opened up a little diner across the street, we're not stopping there, we're going to McDonald's. The only goodwill in a dental office is the dentist. So if you go by that practice and he goes next door, there's no goodwill. So when someone says goodwill in dentistry, think restrictive covenant. Another thing on that goodwill is I have seen a lot of dentists go ballistic because they bought a practice and the dentist violated the goodwill, so they sued. And they had a very rude awakening in suing when someone broke a restrictive covenant. First of all, what did they really think? Did they think they were going to sue and the judge was going to tell the guy, okay, close down your business? Lawyers, judges, they almost never do that. There's too many laws written to support your means of livelihood. In fact, if you have to say, are the laws stacked for you and against you, the laws in this country are stacked to support workers and basically just support people to protect their means of making their livelihood. What do you think the government cares about more? An unemployed homeless dentist who lost his house across the street, or shutting down his means of livelihood so you can have your restricted covenant enforced? So when someone breaks your restricted covenant, all the judge can do is enforce the contract or throw it out. A judge is not going to sit there and write a new contract. Judges don't write contracts. They enforce them or they throw them out. The only contracts they throw out, now remember, I'm not giving legal advice, don't do that, the disclaimer or whatever, but the deal is this. A judge says, okay, the contract says, if you break the restricted covenant, I have the right to sleep with your wife for a year. Okay, the judge will say, well, that's illegal. He'll just throw the whole thing out. But if the restricted covenant says, if you cannot practice for 5 years or for 2 years within a 5-mile radius of my office, and say, okay, that's agreeable, and then the guy breaks it. Well, what is the judge going to do? He doesn't know what to do. They're not going to do anything, okay? But if you sit there, you have to put the penalty in the contract. You will not practice within a 5-mile radius of my house for 2 years, and if you do, you owe me $50,000 for every year you worked in my office. The judge can say, hey, that's enforceable. You can put a lien on his house. You can put a lien on his business. You can enforce that contract. Now, if you're in New York City and you say you do not have the right to practice in New York City, the judge will say, well, this is very unreasonable. Judges' key words are, is this legal and is this reasonable? Is this common sense reasonable? Okay, if it's not legal, if it's not reasonable, it's not common sense, judge throws it out. I mean, there are, gosh darn, 10,000 dentists in New York City, and you told this guy that if he left your office, he can't practice in New York City, that is unreasonable, he'll throw out the whole thing, then the dentist can go next door. That's why you need competent legal advice. You have to say to your lawyer, I'm bringing an associate. What restricted covenants in my county or city have been enforceable with dentists, podiatrists, chiropractors? And they do a literature search or case reviews. And they say, well, you know, I found a judge upheld, because we're in case law. They say, I saw in Phoenix a judge upheld that a chiropractor couldn't practice within 10 miles for 2 years. I saw 7 miles. I saw 5 years. And I definitely think 5 miles for 2 years is a guaranteed, because that's the minimum I've seen enforced. I've seen enforced all the way up to 15 years. It's very different for big towns. Some small towns, I've seen them enforced where they said you couldn't practice in the county because the judge thought it was reasonable that this guy could go into the big city and practice for a couple of years. So it just depends. Get local legal advice from older, experienced, successful lawyers who have practiced that kind of law, and put in your penalties, and you'll know business contract law. The simplest benchmark, if you had to say, well, Howard, just give me an idea for what dental practice are clearing for in the market, if you may, I'd say it's about 1.5 to 2 times total net income. Not what you gross, it's what you produce, what you net. 1.5 to 2 times total net income. Or if you had to have a number on production, they're clearing in the marketplace anywhere from 50% in the small rural, all the way up to 110% in the largest cities in America that are most liquid. And the reason that is so is because you go to dental school and you came from a town of 2,000 and you wanted to go back to your town of 2,000, set up a dental office, but you went to dental school in the big city like Kansas City, dental school where I went, and you met some woman and you said, oh yeah, when we get married, I'm going to go back to the farm and practice in that town. She goes back there and looks at it. She says, not with me. And she fell in love with the Kansas City Chiefs and the Kansas City Kings and the Plaza and all the districts and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of dentists can't find a wife that will go back to the small town. And it's hard to go back to the small town and get married because it's hard to marry your first cousin. A lot of judges frown on that. So you have a lot more buyers in the big cities, so assets are more liquid. That's what the New York Stock Exchange, it tries to organize all the buyers and sellers of shares into one place. So on any given moment, for every person who says you've got to buy Intel, there's someone else saying you have got to get out of Intel. Because remember, whenever you buy a stock, no matter how good you think it is, the person selling it to you wanted to get out. So right now, the highest purchase price seen for a practice, 110% of production, that's seen only in the very largest of cities. That exact same dental practice, all numbers the same, would be 50% of production in a small rural agricultural town of 2,000. Be careful when doing business deals. Everyone deals in their own self-interest, whether they are consciously aware of it or not. I've had more dentists say, well, I can't believe he did this because I checked him out and he went to church every Sunday for 40 years. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. He may be very religious consciously, but unconsciously might not be aware of how shrewd of a business person he is for his own self-interest. No one ever looks in the mirror and says, you're a snake oil salesman cheat. Everybody looks in the mirror and says, I'm a good guy. The usual and customary fee for a business transaction in dentistry is 10% of the sales price, due at the time of closing, paid for by the seller. A lot of dentists try to sell their own practice to get away for that 10%. That's what Stephen Covey would say, thinking in scarcity, what I call fearfully falling forward, instead of thinking in abundancy. If it's ever dawned on you that your house is $100,000, and if you sold it yourself, you might get $90,000 for it, and if you sold it with a real estate agent, you might get $105,000 for it. See, when you think in scarcity of a single pie, and you come in and say, oh my gosh, this broker's going to get one piece of my 10-piece pie, you got the whole wrong mindset. You are never going to be a millionaire fearfully falling forward, thinking in scarcity. You have to think in abundancy. You have to think in growing the pie. You pay in America, you get what you pay for. Get a good consultant after you buy a practice. I keep seeing so many people come out of school, buy a big practice, and then everything everybody said was going to happen didn't happen. If you're going to buy a big practice, why in the world would you spend $350,000 for a practice and not pay $15,000 for an office consultant to look over your shoulder every month for, gosh darn, 18 months? Bill Blatchford will do it for you. Sally McKenzie will do it. Roger Levine will do it. Jim Pride will do it. Kathy Jamison, Linda Miles. AFCO does it for their own. I really recommend the AFCO if you're buying or selling a practice, because this is their target market. They just don't, they don't, I mean, their gig isn't so much as, I mean, they'll do it. They'll go into an office and just say, okay, we'll do a consulting deal for 18 months. But their core competency is doing it during the merger, the acquisition, the buying, the selling. Buying a practice from a broker is shallow in regards to the depth of experience or value-added services available after the sale. When you buy a dental office from a dental practice analyst, the best value-added after services available is a $15,000 and $20,000 after-sale dental practice management consultant to help facilitate the transaction for a year or two, to say, we really think this is what's going to happen, and we're going to hold your hand and follow you through. It's worth your investment. The average dental practice in America runs at 40% of its practice potential. Sally McKenzie is the first one to turn me on to this. I mean, it's amazing what consultants can do for offices, what they have done for offices. These people wouldn't be household names to you and me if what they said wasn't true, if it didn't work. Now, when you look at a dental office, I want you to think of the word perpetual transitioning. This is still a difficult concept in America. Like right now, these people, you're born, you grow up, you're in the workforce, you get older, you die, okay? It's a perpetual transition. Right now, you have these people taking out Social Security in their paycheck at 15%, and everybody thinks it's supposed to be invested so that they can pull it out when they're here. Well, what are they going to invest it in? They're the workers. How can workers take out 15% of their money and invest in themselves? Almost $2.5 trillion of the $5 trillion national debt is an accounting error, okay? It has never been a Social Security savings account. It is a transfer, okay? All it is an income transfer. If you would do that, you wouldn't be paying 16% of the federal budget on interest. That interest would be going to what it is. It's just a transfer. Well, it's the same thing in a dental office. You get out of school, you buy a practice, you start building, you peak up here at about 45 to 50. By 50 years old, if you haven't figured out that one day you're going to be dead, how many dentists you know practice at 100? The oldest dentist that went to my seminar, still practicing, was 92 years old, George Rui from St. Joe, Missouri, and I think he was dead about 6 weeks after the seminar, okay? You're going to die, and up here, you better have, as soon as you have a kid, you better have life insurance and a family trust. As soon as you get up here, you better be incorporated, and you better get a long-term exit strategy. That's not just life insurance, but what are you going to do in your practice? Are you really going to come out here and make $100,000 the first year, build it all the way up to almost $180,000, and then piddle your practice away for $100,000 and lose half the value on the table? Or are you going to sit there and try to maintain value? In fact, we see this perpetual transition in everything in society. Everybody doesn't realize that the average mom spends 19 years with their children, but then when mom's over here, they'll spend 19 years, okay? So right now, the average child spends 18 years at home. The average elderly parent will live 19 years with their children. So this is perpetual transition, okay? The mean on this was 18.5 years. Nearly 90% of dental practices sell for 2/3 of their peak value because dentists stay into the game long afterwards. You all were embarrassed as much as I did when you see those boxers fighting, when they have a cheeseburger in one hand and they made themselves look bad. You really liked it when people went out on top of their game. You need to sit down with AFCO. And by the way, I have nothing to do with AFCO. All this stuff is just absolutely because I think it's good information. Group practice and incorporation allows for your dental office to have perpetual succession while you gain control of your life. Never do office sharing. In my opinion, the only ideal office sharing arrangement is two specialists in two different small towns, altering back and forth. Like this town can't support an endodontist, and it can't support a periodontist, but we'll get two offices. I'll do 2 days endo here and 2 days endo here while you're alternating 2 days of perio here, 2 days of perio here. But when you're a general dentist and you bring in a dentist to use your operatories on the day you're not there for $1,000 a month rent, it's always a loss. It's no investment. We have two separate practices. The patients don't win. Your customers don't win. You're not building any investment. I think the whole thing is absolutely just... And then when the guy leaves or builds up his practice in your backyard, he usually goes next door. So what are you doing with space sharing? You're saying for $5,000 a month, this guy can come in and use two operatories for these 2 days until he gets a big enough practice going, then he can go next door. So all you're doing is attracting alligators to feed in your own backyard for no benefit of yours. And if you think $2,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 or $6,000 of rent money is any real money, you should get an associate. The whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Now, how many? Some more benchmarking. In my definition here, an active patient is someone who's been in the office one time this year. If someone's been in your office one time this year, I don't care if it's a check tooth, a cleaning, or an emergency, or whatever, on the aggregate, you need 300 patients that have been in your office one time for a full 8-hour day. So for 2 days of dentistry, you need 600 active patients. 3 days, 900, 4 days, 1,200, 5 days, 1,500. You get the picture. Aggregate audit numbers. Every 400 patients active should produce $100,000 a year in production. These are just aggregate audit numbers for yourself to find out, is your office running at 40% speed, 50% speed, or do you got the pedal to the metal, and these are your numbers. So if you had 400 people come to your office one time last year, it should be a $100,000 practice. If you had 800 people come to your office one time last year, it should have done 200, et cetera, et cetera. Every one new patient in an open at large, long-term running aggregate dental office should equate with $2,000 worth of production. A dental office doing $300,000 per month production is probably getting 50 new patients a month. I'm saying these facts so that you can, you never know which number you're going to get. Like, what if you're looking at an office and he says, we do $30,000 a month. You say, well, how many new patients you get a month? He says, well, I'm not sure. We don't really track that. Then you guys are calling me saying, well, Howard, he says he gets $30,000 a month, but I don't know if he gets any new patients. And I'm telling you, if he does $30,000 a month on the long run, aggregate, open, a large collection of dental offices from huge surveying, $30,000 a month dental offices are probably getting 15 new patients a month. So if he doesn't know how many new patients he's getting, or he doesn't track it or whatever, for every $2,000 worth of production, he's probably getting a new patient. Just like if you want to know, he's not computerized. And you say, well, I don't computerize. I'm a young dentist out of school. I want to sit down on Microsoft Word, Excel, and PowerPoint and fly through this thing and look at all the data. I thought he would have SoftDent or Dent Supplies or Dentrix or EagleSoft, and doesn't have any data. And I say, well, we can get to these numbers either way. I mean, what does this thing collect? 200,000 a year. Well, he's got 800 active patients. So for every 400 patients, probably $100,000 a year in production. So if you got the production number, you can just divide it by 400 per 100,000. You got new active patients. Same thing with new patients coming in. So look at these audit numbers. Work them either way. You know math. A equals B plus C. If you give me any two of those variables, you can get the third with modern day algebra, right? Ever since Sir Isaac Newton, can you believe that Sir Isaac Newton gave us algebra, calculus, motion, gravity? And he's from England. That's what's the most surprising about the thing. It is not the number of charts. There's only one way to appraise any business in the world. What is someone willing to pay for it? It has nothing to do with the number of charts or stools. This is where a full-time practice broker can tell you all day long what this type of practice will sell for. Some arcane formula or some broker will sit there and say, well, I think it's worth this. A broker might think it's worth that, but an analyst, especially one from Africa, I mean, I have all the faith in the world of putting all my weight behind this guy. He's done $1 billion. I've met with him several times, and he's a really nice guy. I've had a lot of soul-searching deals between this method, that method, MBA school stuff, And whenever I call that guy, he always answers his phone. Whenever I'm in Atlanta and I say, you know, I'm sorry, we've never made a dime off each other, but would you meet me at the airport and can we go over all this stuff? He's just truly a scholar and a gentleman. At 2,500 active patients, you and your patients could both benefit from an associate. You could have Dr. A work Monday, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, 10-hour days. Dr. B would work Thursday, Friday, Saturday, 10-hour days. For each 10-hour day, you need about 375 active patients. That's being someone who came in one time last year. So start doing the math. The clinical staff rotates with the dentist. An active patient is someone who has been in the practice at least once in the last year. This setup needs 4 treatment rooms, 2 for hygiene, 2 for the restorative dentist. And what's really neat is by having Dr. A and B rotate, that means every time you rotate, you get a week off. So if you work, you're Dr. B and you work Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, and then next week you're Dr. B's working Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, then he leaves the office Wednesday and doesn't have to be back till the following loop Thursday. So every time they rotate, you get a week off. It's a very, very, very fun deal, okay? When the selling dentist has equity in the sale, the seller with equity will be your best patient referral. History also shows that the more of the existing patients will stay with the new dentist. That's what the dentists are always asking me. They're saying, well, how many of these patients do you think will stay? I'll say, well, how do you finance it? And he said, well, he wanted $350,000 for his office, and he wanted all the money up front. I said, so you gave him $350,000 all up front, and he ran, and you're standing here with the ball, and you want to know how many will stay? What I remember in economics, he's going to make decisions based on the score and the incentives. What is his incentive? All the patients will stay. He got his money, he ran. See, people who want no equity in the deal, maybe they have asymmetrical information. Maybe they know something you don't. If that guy was carrying half of, say you bought it for $400,000, and selling doctor had half of it, and he lives in this town, hell, he paid off his house, he lives in town, he has $200,000 at stake. Every gosh darn month, he's waiting on that check. What do you think he's out there doing when he's walking around? Every time he runs to his whole patient, oh my God, oh, this is so great because I found the best guy in the world and he's, oh my God. I mean, can you believe what they teach him at these universities these days? I mean, that guy does stuff I never heard of. In fact, he was telling me something about this stuff called periodontal disease and root canals and all this stuff like that. Unbelievable. Remember, when you observe behavior, why are they doing their behavior? The first thing economist says is, what is his motive? Incentives. Is he an incentive for this behavior? Like when a salesman's telling you how great something is, you can figure out that he might have a commission if you agree with him, okay? What's the incentive for the doctor for all the patients? When people want all their money up front, it usually has more to do with something about like called snake oil, okay? You don't make money from owning sheetrock and dental equipment. If you want to own real estate, go out there and buy a commercial piece of property. Go out there and buy condominiums. That way, if you ever need your condominium to be returned back to cash, you can liquidate it while you're still doing a dental office, okay? Fixed expenses will depreciate all the way to zero. You make money by fixing up patients' teeth beyond their expectations. If you're in a group practice and if you've got some associates and they all want to buy into the building, you know what? Say how much you want to pay. They'll say, well, how much is it worth? Just tell me how much you want to invest. You want to invest $50,000? I'll get you rental part of $50,000. You want to put $200,000? I'll buy your rental part of $200,000. You want to make money doing dentistry? You're already doing it. Okay. Associate is not an assistant dentist. The associate dentist is not an assistant dentist. If your associate dentist is not treated as a professional equal, they are designed to fail. When your front office staff tells me no one wants the assistant dentist or the new associate dentist, I say, well, give the receptionist an incentive to change your mind. Just say to her, well, if nobody wants them, I'm going to fire your ass and find someone that wants to sell them. Because they're up there with body language, unconsciously not aware of it, telling each patient one by one, do you want Dr. Good or do you want the new guy? Okay, so it's how are you presenting it? Dental ownership facts, 21% of dentists graduated in the last 10 years are non-owners. 8% of all dentists are non-owners. Average age of a non-owner dentist is 40 years old. Average net income of a non-owner dentist is $65,000 a year. This is why associates have such a bad reputation. Like, well, why would you want to be an associate? Well, once again, economic theory. They make decisions on whether to associate or buy or own based on the score, which is right in front of you, which is the incentive. And when associates make $65,000 a year, hell yes, they don't want to be an associate. Mine make from a low last year of 145 to a high of 167. Yet, according to the ADA survey, the top 25% of associates only make over 85,000. The medium is 60,000, and the bottom 25 make 40,000. What the hell did you go to 8 years of dental school for to make 40,000 a year? You could do that with a pretty damn good paper route. Dentist average incomes. The average general dentist earns $122,000 a year, specialists $192,000 a year. The average for all dentists, specialists and generalists, is $135,000 a year. The top 25% of dentists earn over $175,000. The median dentist earns around $120,000. The bottom 25% of all dentists earn less than $75,000 a year. So what I always wonder, if 1 out of every 4 dentists makes less than $75,000 a year, and they live out in Bumblebutt, North Dakota, they ought to sell their damn office, retire in the Valley of Sun, come work for me, where my low was $145,000. My lowest associates made $145,000, and 25 out of every 100 dentists make less than $75,000. The median's $120,000. What that tells me is today's dental is a hell of a concept, where my lowest paying doctor earns $25,000 a year more than the average dentist, the median $120,000. Now, granted, mine work. You know, if dentists who work 40 hours a week or more average $140,000 a year. If they average 32 hours a week, it's $105,000 a year. 32 hours or less is $85,000 a year. So, you know, are you talking about an old dentist who works 3 days a week? So think about that. Are you dealing with incentives or disincentives? A fixed salary or fixed hourly rate is a disincentive to the employee and the employer. An incentive-based profit-sharing plan is an incentive for employees and employer. Incentives make everything win-win, lose-lose. A win-lose or a lose-win scenario can only work in the short-run economy closed, never in the long-run open at large aggregate economy. It's not the percent, it's the practice. There are a heck of a lot of associates making a fortune at 25% and a heck of a lot barely scraped by at 40%. If the associate works for a profitable practice, then everyone grows the pie and makes money. If the practice is not making money, they can't afford to invest in the practice, so the pie starts to shrink. If this office runs at 65% overhead, I pay you 40. Every time you do $1, I lose 5 cents. I have no reason in intraoral cameras, air abrasions, send you to Hornbrook or LVI or the Mission Institute or the Pank Institute or Gordon's, or I have no incentive of Yellow Page ads or 1-800-DENTIST or anything. In fact, I got an incentive to close this place down. Young dental graduates, by and large, are a very dysfunctional group of people. When they come out of med school, dental school, and law school, my God, they're insecure, paranoid, scared, believe they know it all, have too many hormones, have no experience, have no money, have little to zero dental skills. Other than that, they're great. Money and sex. Contrary to popular belief, most group practices don't break up. The number one reason that they do break up is over how the income is divided or spent. The same is also true with marriages. Sexual problems are number 2 in marriages. So if you want to have your money split up, you want to have your marriage split up, you want to have your group practice split up, you want to have your kids grow up and be emotionally run whenever they hear the word money or bills or accounting, all you have to do is not face your accounting and your peach tree, and if you don't face the money picture, that dragon's going to slay you. The dragon's going to slay you, ruin your marriage, ruin your group, or you're going to slay the dragon. I don't see any other choice. It's a two-way street. Get eaten by the money dragon or slay the son of a gun and sit on top of him with a big smile on your face. When doing a deal, if it's meant to be there, it's almost no way to stop it. If it's not meant to be there, there's no way to close it. Learn to say no to a bad deal. You know, people are always trying to force a deal when no one thinks it's a good deal. And by the way, the doctor's wife and office managers and staff and other people who aren't emotionally involved in the deal, they got great incentives. I've seen this in dentistry 1,000 times, where a dentist will say, I'm putting together an institute. How many of these institutes have you seen come up and go? And let's call them and say, Howard, we want you to be in this institute. We're like, really, who's in it? That guy's divorced 3 times, that guy's divorced 5 times, and this guy's divorced 7 times. Thanks, but no thanks, okay? when you look at these collection of egomaniacs and you put them together and everybody around them saying it'll never work, it'll never work, it'll never work, and then they always go together and they blow up 2 years later, you can't put dysfunctional egomaniacs in the same cage and have anybody come out alive. If it's meant to be, there's no way to stop it. If it's not meant to be, there's no way to get it to work, okay? Ask yourself these questions. If you're thinking about an associate or you're wondering, when you start about 50 years old, no matter every dentist you ask, how long do you plan to stay in dentistry? They always say 5 years. They say 5 years of 50, 5 years of 55, 5 years of 60, 5 years of 65. So ask yourself, do you have the same energy, more energy, less energy than you did 5 years ago? If you had to do it all over again, would you still even be a dentist? What part of the profession dentistry do you dislike the most? I have the perfect person for group practice is the person who says, well, I don't like managing the staff. I hate paying the bills. I hate dealing with accountants and lawyers. But, I still get off when I do a root canal, and I love cosmetic dentistry, and I like veneers, bleaching, whatever. Well, you got to go into group practice. Let someone who likes managing the staff, who's good at managing the staff, who likes paying the bills, who likes dealing with accountants, do it. Group practice means freedom. Group practice means that you don't have to wait till you're 65 to have freedom. You weren't born a dentist. You don't have to die being a dentist. Start planning early. The number one problem in selling your business today is waiting until the last year and then trying to sell it with an owner walkaway. The correct selling of a dental business should start 2 to 5 years in advance. If you go up to AFCO and said, I want to sell my practice, get what you can, I want to be out of here by fishing season, they're pulling their hair out. You need to start a long-term relationship because you can get a lot more value for that. They'll say, really? You really went out in 5 years? Okay, you really went out in 5 years? This is what you should start thinking. Let's get a computer system. Let's get that implemented for a year or so. Let's get an associate. Let's do that, la. They can really start planning, and when you walk away in 5 years, you can walk away twice the money if you plan early. You remember, you know who wins every negotiation? Whoever planned the most. If you walk onto a car lot because you just left a baseball game and you've never been in this part of the city in a long time, you see a car lot and you walk on there, you start asking about a car and you get emotionally caught up and walk away, you pay premium. But if you sit there and say, I want this car, you start doing internet searches, you start collecting what they're selling for used at 10,000 miles, 15,000 miles, 20,000 miles, whoever does the most preparation wins every negotiation. Why is it that starting around 50 years old, they all went out in 5 years, but they don't have any action? See, thoughts lead to actions lead to habits. Collect all your habits. There's your character is your destiny. Are you a planner or a procrastinator? Are you paralysis by analysis, or do you just do it? You should have your own first business ownership transition consultant at least between 45 and 50. The two most important words in practice management consulting are why and no. When someone says you need to do this, ask why, really nail the why, and if you're not prepared to say no, don't go into it. It's like an associate. You advertise for an associate, and they bring someone in your office. If you're not prepared to say no before you even meet this person, run, okay? You have to say no to a deal. My dad told me 1,000 times, no deal is 100 times better than a bad deal. If you can't say no to a deal, you're going to get emotionally caught up in a bad deal. No deals are kick butt when compared to a bad deal. The meaning of the word no. In business transitions, the word no means the deal is not meant to be. You didn't lose the deal between the two parties. Not being able to say no is because you waited until the last minute and tried to arrange a no equity walkaway deal. Remember, you never lose a deal. The deal wasn't there. Dad always say, how'd you lose a deal? The deal wasn't meant to be. How could you lose a deal if the deal wasn't meant to be? You never had a deal. How could you lose a deal? There never was a deal. How are the bad deals 100 times worse than a good deal? What's a sign of faith? If you're thinking about buying a practice, seller wants 100% of the purchase price in cash, it's only because seller has no faith in you, or has no faith in the practice, or has no faith in you and the practice. I want this person to have an equity. And I see every time there's a hidden cockroach under the cabinet, there's 1,000 cockroaches. Have you ever found just one cockroach? They're like Democrats. They're always together in thousands and clumps. They take over a whole part of town. If the guy wants cash, he's dealing in asymmetrical information. He knows something that you don't. Every time some guy says, man, I really got screwed. It's like, okay, Why did you get screwed? Well, I bought this practice and he didn't tell me A, B, and C. I'll say, well, how much did he ask in cash? How much did he carry? Oh, he had to have it all in cash. I mean, come on. Why do you think he wouldn't have it all in cash? Because he knew they were in there. Why did you not have this guy have an incentive at stake? If he would have carried the gosh darn loan, number one, you want to get an office and no money down? Sell yourself as a dentist, sell yourself as a leader, sell yourself as a manager, and then say, hey, I think this practice is worth $300. You want $400? I'll take it for $450. You finance the whole thing. You give it to me on an 8-year loan at 8% interest. Now what do you think of the deal? And I've seen dentists walk in there and get that deal too. So it's how much faith do they have in you? If they have no faith in you, I mean, maybe if you go to 5 dentists and every major religion and the best town in the world and all their brokers, everybody seems normal and everybody wants 100%, I'll tell you, you're a loser. They want their money. You've had 5 opinions. Everyone's looked at you. Everyone's analyzed you. Everyone's determined you're going to take this practice and ruin it, okay? So it's either going to get a bad deal, they have asymmetrical information, or you shouldn't be buying it in the first place. If you don't come up with half the practice purchase price in cash, then you don't have faith in yourself. Look in the mirror. If you can't find one bank out of the 8,000 plus banks in America to loan you 1/2 the money when the selling dentist with more information than the banker or you is willing to carry 1/2 the loan, then the problem's with you. I mean, come on, the problem is never, my dad said a million times, the problem isn't getting a loan. The problem's paying the loan back. If the selling dentist is going to carry half, the banker's impressed by that. The selling dentist knows dentistry is his practice. He has faith in you. He's going to carry half. The bank says, okay, well, I'll carry half. Yada, 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 yada. It's a no-brainer. If 8,000 banks in America tell you they won't loan you half when the seller's carrying half, when the problem is not getting a loan, it's paying it back, then look in the mirror. The expense-oriented business owner is a myopic thinker who never achieves success. Debt is a consumption expense, but in business, it's an investment. Buying a good business is an investment, which is usually worth more in 5 years than what you paid for it. I have a lot of dentists say, well, I'm not paying $400,000 for a dental office. I said, well, if you bought $400,000 for a dental office, paid off in 5 years, what do you think the office would be worth? It would be $400,000. So what was the expense? How did you pay expense? What was the expense? Well, I just don't want to pay that much for a dentist. You're not listening. How much does he want for the practice? $400,000. How long is the loan? 5 years. So when you pay the loan off in 5 years, how much is the business worth? $400,000. Hello? Hello? It is metaphysically impossible for a lawyer or accountant to be an expert in your business. The dumbest thing in the world I always hear is, well, I'm going to run this deal by my lawyer. Buddy, 8 years of dental school. They didn't even teach you QuickBooks Pay. You didn't even teach you what a 401k is. They didn't teach you how to do payroll. Well, the lawyer's the same way. Why do you think this government's so screwed up? Because everybody in Congress and the Senate is a goddamn lawyer. There are none of lawyers, doctors, and dentists are as dumb as they come. If you were to want to buy someone, why don't you go find some Chinese guy in L.A. who just washed up on the shore, doesn't speak English, and owns his own Chinese restaurant? Maybe that would be a good guy to run it by, but not some gosh darn lawyer, a CPA, an accountant, a dentist. I mean, hell, you might as well have a periodontist look at it. I mean, that's absolutely stupid. The only person that's going to run your business is you. And when you run to lawyers and you run to CPAs, you're an idiot. If you're going to run to anybody, don't go to a broker. A broker wants 10% commission. Run to an analyst. Run with someone like AFCO says, all we do is buy and sell dental practices. We've done it $1 billion worth. We've done it since you were 6 years old. This is what we think is going to happen. This is what will happen. Listen to us. Pay for excellent advice. It's an investment. If you can't see that, you really need to rethink where you're at. Behind every successful business decision you could ever make, the single most important business decision you could ever make is to marry or develop a business interest in your spouse. Behind every successful business person in the world is a business-oriented spouse. Milton Friedman, Rose Friedman. What would Gordon Christian be without Rella? My wife's, gosh darn, not only is her dad a millionaire and had his own business, Two of my wife's brothers made the Inc. 500. Hell, they have a $60, $100 million construction company that they started from scratch. And if your wife comes from a house where dad worked on assembly line, mom stayed home, made cookies, your dad was a postman, and your mom stayed home, made cookies, and you guys like golfing and shopping, and where is the business interest? And then you're going to go compete with sharks. That's all they do. My wife and I, 99% of our conversation are about two things: business and children. That's our only interest. We don't want to golf. We don't play tennis. We build tennis courts for our house. We don't know why. Our deal is business and kids. That's our interest. That's why we kick ass at it. If it's not your interest, then go make $145,000 to $165,000 a year being an associate. And if you want to own real estate, buy a condominium, gosh darn, buy a rental property, but stick it in a 401k, grow this baby. Just stay where your interests are. Stay with what you're good at. Swim with the sharks or be prepared to get eaten alive. Group practice means diversity. A group practice is like an index fund. It provides a diversification format for risk, stress, responsibility, and ultimately your income. If I got a patient in our office, everyone knows who likes what. Everyone knows who's good at what. Everyone knows that if you're not hitting it off with the patient, it could be chemistry. Everybody knows whenever I can't find a third canal, after I've been looking for 30 minutes, I walk out of the room and any other associate, fresh set of eyes, will find it in 2 seconds. It's because you got tunnel vision. It's just like they'll go in there and they have a denture. They've got a source where they adjust it 5 times. And then they're in there adjusting again. You'll walk in there and you'll look at the bite and in 2 seconds say, well, God, look at the bite. Hell, he's in a cross bite. What the hell do you think? It's tunnel vision. Group practice is diversity. It means going on vacation and letting your mind be where you're on vacation, not being on vacation, your mind back in the dental office. Deciding that you want to set up your business in a certain geographical area simply because you were born there when you have no other research as to whether or not that geographical area needs your business services represents the exact same intelligence as a homing pigeon. Pete, dentists always tell me, in the world today, 6 billion people, only 2% of the world's population lives in a country outside where they're born. I mean, I even see people come to the United States, Arizona State University, get an engineering degree, and decide they're going to go back to gosh darn Bangladesh because they were born there. I mean, what are you thinking? When a person spouts off judgmental accusations of other people's characters, it is almost always that person's unconscious talking about themselves. Remember that. When you're sitting here at the dentist and saying, well, you should really do business with me because everybody else lies, cheats, and steals. That person is telling you they're lying, cheating, and stealing, okay? Listen to what people accuse people out of nowhere, wild accusations, and what that is, it's like a Rorschach ink blot test, okay? When you're doing a contract with a guy, and you give him the standard contract that AFCO is used in selling $1 billion of dental practices. He says, yeah, I read the contract, but there's one thing I don't like, I want to change, and that's with the restrictor covenant. Okay, instantly you know this guy is hiding thoughts about the restricted covenant. He thinks he's dealing asymmetrical information, and you just saw his mind right up there on the table. Okay, why is he focused on this? What is he thinking? Okay, take a clue. Ask yourself, if you purchase a practice from a selling dentist, and you ask for a 10-mile radius, and the seller decides that he or she only wants 5, your response should now be to ask for 15. Why would any dentist who truly wanted to sell their practice and retire be focusing on the restricted covenant? Whatever people talk about is what their mind is focusing on. Ask yourself where they're focusing on this. True confidence only comes from true competence. Do you really want to be the boss? Everyone tells me they want to be the boss. They really want to own the thing. Now, why? Their benefits for being the boss is to have full responsibility for staff, rent, payroll, bills, equipment. Is that why you want to take years of dental school? If you feel the rewards for bossing around the staff exceed the benefits of stress-free personal responsibility and freedom, then you are dysfunctional. Why must so many dentists own? Why do so many dentists insist on wanting to own their own dental offices, which is nothing more than a large non-interest-bearing asset? Remember I said you bought this practice for $400,000? Paid off 5 years? Well, what do you think? You think it's like Intel stock? You think it's worth now $1,200,000? No, it's still $400,000. It's this huge, large, non-interest bearing asset that is very illiquid, okay? I can sell my Intel stock in about 5 or 10 minutes. It takes you sometimes a year to sell a damn dental office. What's even more bizarre is that these same dentists usually do not even take full advantage and maximize an interest-bearing, tax-deferred 401k. So you didn't maximize your 401k, but you want to be the boss because you want to own a bunch of sheetrock and a bunch of dental burrs. I don't understand any of this. And also, if you think, why am I interested in this, or why am I behind this? Well, first of all, look at group practice. I'm telling you, solo practice is in a massive, massive headwind. Physicians, it's under half. For dentists, it's down to 68%. Group practice up to 32%. In 1992, would you have ever guessed that by the year 2000, there'd be 9 publicly traded dental office chains doing general dentistry, some of which have over 250 offices and did $250 million in sales? When someone spouts off, "Are you telling me how to run my business?" I always reply, "No, you're showing me that you don't know how to run a business." Of course, you have life insurance and a will. So at 50 years old, if you have not made a solid relationship with a long-term, risk-averse, national brand name practice transition broker analyst like AFCO, you are essentially making the same decision as not having life insurance or a will. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. When you're taking on an associate on a long-term buyout, like he's going to work for me for 5 years, then I'm going to sell it to him and he'll work for me 5 years, then the associate practice transition, whatever contract the associate dentist works under until the practice transition, has to be the exact same contract the selling dentist works for under after the sale for the same length of time. What's good for the goose, good for the gander. If he says to you, "Well, when you work for me, I'll give you 10% and you can only do amalgams, and then you'll do that for me for 5 years, then I'll sell it to you, then I'll get 40% and I'll do all the crowns and root canals," that's not fair. The number one way to get to fair is what's good for the goose is good for the gander. A non-money down deferred owner transition is a practice price is determined. The buying dentist associate signs an associate contract. 1/3 of dentist associate gross pay is withheld in a savings account until 50% of the purchase price is accumulated. At the 50-50 yard line, the selling dentist reserves the option to cancel the selling deal contract and refund the money plus interest to the associate dentist, or the practice title is transferred and now the selling dentist works under the exact same associate contract for as long as agreed upon by both parties. I believe this is where an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth may come down. A non-money down deferred owner transition is probably the best no money down, get into a dental office, win-win situation around. AFCO has done about $300 million worth of these in just the last 10 years alone. Grow the pie. When you advertise for a dentist to come into your office for an office sharing agreement, you're essentially cutting up your own geographical area market by one more slice. This is not growing the pie. Success, defined succinctly, is fulfilling your needs by doing what you want to when you want to. I can say with great confidence that AFCO doesn't sell practices, but dentists all across America have simply bought over $1 billion of solutions from AFCO to solve their own personal practice needs. Now, negotiating legal bills. When you are negotiating with another party on a business matter, if both parties initially agree that neither party will release the name and phone number of their respective attorney and that all legal recommendations and changes are made in writing, you'll significantly reduce your legal bills. Remember, don't sit there and say, "Well, I'm going to get my lawyer and you get your lawyer," and then give each other names. Now the lawyers are going to get on the phone. They're going to talk to each other. Why? They have an incentive. Every time they talk, it's $250 an hour. Do not give the phone numbers out of the opposing lawyers. If your lawyer has a problem with the contract, then you have him submit it to you in writing. Writing makes it succinct and gets rid of all the bullshit, because if he's just blowing bullshit, when he puts it on paper, he's got bullshit on paper. Other lawyers or colleagues can sit there and say, "He wrote this?" And then that starts circulating in the legal community and say, look what this guy's saying. Okay? So if you have a lawyer and the other party has a lawyer, keep that to yourself. If your lawyer has a concern, say, "Well, that's great. That's why I hired you. Now give it to me in writing." Then come back to them and say, "This is what my lawyer said in writing." And he may say, "Well, if that's what you want, I'm closing right here. So now you know, well, are you willing to walk and lose the whole deal on this? Or does the guy say, well, let me show this to my lawyer. My lawyer looks at it. He succinctly puts on paper what his thoughts are. You guys do the negotiations. The lawyers are idiots. If the lawyer was such a gosh darn good businessman, why does he not have a dime? Okay? The only reason a lawyer makes money is because idiots like you feed them. Don't feed the lawyers. Balanced thinking. In accounting, all credits have to balance with all debits. All assets have to balance with all liabilities and equities. To be successful, you have to master balanced thinking. Unsuccessful people think unilaterally. They always think with emphasis on scarcity and destruction. Successful people do unto others as they want done to themselves. They're win-win negotiators. That's why they close the deal. If all you can think about is yourself, me, self, me, if he misses a payment, he will have to owe me $1 million cash. But if I miss a payment, well, that's okay. So you got to think balance. You got to put yourself in their perspective. If you want to be a businessman, you have to master successful, win-win, grow the pie, treat others like you want to be treated. A buying dentist cannot be responsible for collecting the account receivable because the buyer wasn't the one that extended the credit. So if you're a buying dentist, and the seller said, come on. Were you the one that extended credit to all these people? No. So how can you be responsible for collecting it? Penalties make contracts stronger. There should be penalties expressly stated for each contractual agreement so that if one party reneges on an item of the contract after the agreement goes into effect, you'll have more control over the resultant penalty. For instance, if the buyer reneges on the restricted covenant not to compete, then the seller has to refund 1/2 of the purchase price within 30 days or be held in breach of contract. And so it goes. Dentists go dysfunctional when their favorite way of thinking based on their own half-baked value belief system runs head-on into the realities of Econ 101. The dentists usually spend the best productive years of their profession seeking out superstitious dental speakers who run ghostly dental offices that only exist in Never Never Land. They all tell dentists exactly what they want to hear, and the cycle repeats itself, and so it goes. Residencies do wonders for a dentist. I think part of it's because you got to be pretty studly to get in, because they're pretty damn studly when they get out. When looking for the ideal associate, on the aggregate, a dentist who has completed a general practice residency is a cut above those who haven't. They seem overall to be willing to do far more procedures than the average dentist refers out. You bring in a dentist with a general residency, they're probably doing root canals, wisdom teeth removal, perio surgery, implant surgery. I'm telling, hell, look at the AGD. If you have a residency, the AGD gives you half the requirements for your fellowship in the AGD. They give you 250 of your 500 hours just for having a residency. These guys are a cut among the rest. If they don't have a residency, I would say a dentist straight out of a 1-year residency is equivalent to a dentist 5 years out of dental school. These guys are a cut above the rest. Always remember that. Come retire in Arizona. You wouldn't be listening to me right now if the ownership of dental practice weren't an outright burden. Never confuse ownership with profit. The smartest thing any dentist over 50 could do is to sell their practice, put their money in their pension fund to grow with the miracle of compound interest, retire in Arizona, can play in my office with no managed headaches, and make between $145,000 as a low so far to $165,000 as a high. Who should pay for an associate's disability insurance? Obvious. Who's going to benefit from the insurance? The associates. Who should pay for an associate's life insurance? Well, who the hell is going to benefit from the life insurance? The associate. People who buy insurance are going to benefit from it, so it should be their money. And remember, everything is tax deductible until you're audited. One of the strangest comments from associate dentists when they're deciding whether or not to own a dental practice is when they say that if they own their own office, they could run a lot of their personal expenses through the office. First of all, it's not legal. You're basically coming up to me and saying, I'm an illegal crook. I want to buy my own office so I can be a crook. My answer is everything is tax deductible until you're audited by the not-so-dumb IRS. It will be just you in front of the IRS judge. There won't be any jury. There won't be any Johnny the Cockroach Cochran. And you'll try to fool this IRS judge and you'll lose, okay? The United States of America always allows the juries for all your personal problems. But when you're dealing with the government, with the SEC, there's no jury. You're a billionaire. You go to jail. Ask Michael. If you're going with the IRS judge, no jury, You lose, you go to jail. The government does not screw around. They say they have a jury in the military, but who's the military jury? Everyone looking for a promotion, okay? There's no jury in dealing with the government. Success comes from a lifelong practice of critical balanced thinking for hope, growth, and prosperity. Failure comes from a lifelong practice of unilateral, asymmetrical scarcity thinking and living in fear. Choose group practice. If you could make more money without the burden and stress from ownership, would you take that option? Critical balanced thinking for hope, growth, and prosperity would. Fair deals close. Your attorney is your unilateral representative with the same business experience as dentists, physicians, pharmacists, professors, congressmen, senators. Business brokers make a living by closing deals. They are balanced and fair because if they aren't, they don't close. And if the brokers don't close deals, they don't eat. When you are in a group practice, you can go on vacation and concentrate where you are and not worry about where you aren't. High quality decisions will prevent burnout. At the unconscious level, psychological depression and burnout, as opposed to chemical clinical depression, is really all about the effects from having the true needs produced from your thoughts, about making a life change without following through with the physical action of making a high quality decision. You're going into the bird cage every day and it's shocking you, but you're forced to go in there for money, and that always leads to burnout, disease, and depression. The fastest, surest way for a young dentist to buy an existing dental practice is to obtain a cosigner. The reason this is resented is mostly pride, and that's okay. But the incorrect part of this existing belief model is that the young dentist believes their parents would have to co-sign for the entire purchase amount. That is false. We're only talking about co-signing for the amount of the down payment. This is usually only $30,000 to $60,000. Okay? Not nearly the frightening amount causing your unconscious fear and anxiety. You usually say to me, well, I never did that because I didn't want my mom and dad to co-sign for a $400,000 office. Well, no one would advise that. They want the selling dentist to have half of it at stake. So he's watching over this. We're talking about co-signing for the $30,000 to $60,000 down payment. If your mom has a Suburban and your dad has a gosh darn one of those F100 4 million pound trucks, they could probably co-sign for 60 grand. Economic incentives are always a must. The number one flaw in all practice management material and lectures is the complete inattention to economic incentives, whether it's for the entire staff's own self-interest, whether it's for this selling dentist or whatever. I'll just end on what's the ultimate in economics. People make decisions based on how they see the score, and it's affected by incentives. Follow the incentives. Bye-bye.